All right, Dylan Bowman. I'm a big fan. I'm super thankful that you take time to do this with me. Um, Let me give you a little bit of context. I already gave you a little bit, but here's a little bit more. I am the worst 100 miler in the country. I have yet to find my equal. I've towed the line of 800 milers, and I've only finished one. I've DNF'd seven. I believe that's roughly a 12% finish rate. But I'm all in. Like I still can't imagine not trying again. I'm 40, almost 41, and so I'm going for Zion here in April, and I'm on the hunt for advice. At this point, I feel like I'm a problem solver. I'm a thinker, and I have done everything I can, and I'm out of it, and I don't have any more solutions, and so I'm on the hunt for good advice. And to bring my audience up to speed before they understand fully why I'm coming for your advice, let's get to know you a little bit. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
All right. Tell me a little bit about yourself. I think you born in Reno, grew up in Colorado, something like that.
Precisely. Yeah, my folks were living in Lake Tahoe,
Oh, nice.
which, feels appropriate now at this point in my life. My folks were
Yeah.
living at Lake Tahoe when I was born, but I was born at the hospital in Reno. When I was 2 months old, my dad got a new job in Boulder, Colorado. And
Wow.
so my folks relocated there when I was only a couple months old. I have no memories, obviously, of living in the Lake Tahoe area, even though it's
Yeah.
become one of my favorite places to visit and to run.
Yeah.
It's sort of maybe a biological feeling just knowing that I spent at least the first few weeks of my life there. But yeah, I spent the bulk of my childhood in Colorado, really all the way up through college in Colorado, and have been sort of bouncing around the West, now settled in the Bay Area in Marin County, arguably the greatest trail running destination in the world. And
Nice.
I'm never, ever leaving Marin County ever again. We made that mistake once, and now we're back and we're never leaving again.
Okay, so I don't know much about Marin County other than I do feel like it's odd that you have moved there later in life and that you're not like a legacy Marin County guy. But is that true? You don't? Did you have any ties there? Or you just ended up there.
No, so here's the story. I met my wife while we were both living in Aspen,
Okay.
and I had a good job in Aspen and very much my running career was taking off at the time and very much viewed myself as being a lifelong Roaring Fork Valley resident.
Yeah.
My wife was there just after college, more in the ski bum track, wasting time, recreating, uh, while she figured out what she wanted to do professionally and get a real job. Obviously, it's hard to find a real job in these resort towns and a quote unquote real job. Obviously, there's a lot of people who build cool lifestyles and cool careers there, but it's mostly hospitality oriented. And she had other
Mhm.
ambitions. And she convinced me as I was kicking and screaming to reluctantly move to San Francisco together to try it out. And my one stipulation was, okay, I'll come with you as long as we live in Marin County. Because at that point, the North Face 50-mile championship
Yeah.
had been taking place and I'd done it a couple of times.
Okay.
So I knew that there was good running there. And my running career, like I said, was sort of taking off at the time.
Yeah.
So that was my stipulation. Yes, I'll come with you as long as we live at Marin. And she agreed. And yeah, we had 5 of the best years of our lives living here. And then
Wow.
we left, and we view that as sort of a mistake, and that's why we're back now and never ever leave it again.
Yeah. Okay. So your life has been in like these unbelievable trail running places, Reno to Boulder, uh, to Marin County. What was in between? So you go from growing up, maybe high school, Boulder. You're a lacrosse guy, right?
Yep.
So
Yeah.
where did you
So
do that?
I played lacrosse both in high school and college, and so I like spent my whole life in Colorado and was always a
Wow.
team sport oriented guy. And while I was in college, I went up to Aspen to work because you can just get seasonal jobs, right? And
Yeah.
because I was playing lacrosse, I didn't really have time to get a job during my collegiate years. So I would go up to Aspen in both winter break around Christmas and also, for the 3 months of summer break and save some money. I cultivated some connections there. And then after I graduated from college, because I had had some professional connections in Aspen, I figured, oh, okay, I'll move up there. Not really sure what I want to do with my life.
Yeah.
And then I discovered running at a point in my life when I I was really missing the structure of organized sport and all the benefits that it brought into my life, the friendships, the discipline, the health. At that time, I was partying super hard,
Yeah.
sort of losing touch with the fitness that I had worked hard to cultivate throughout the course of my life. And so I just started running to stay healthy, and then learned about Anton Krupicka, learned about the Leadville 100. The
Yeah.
snowball started rolling, and here we are 15 years later, and it's been the centerpiece of my life for a long time.
Okay, so you're super fit. I mean, lacrosse, I got to imagine probably like soccer to some degree, like it's constant running, but there's also like upper body stuff happening. So there's a lot of fitness, like cardiovascular and muscular, and you're switching to trail running. So maybe even just to start to head toward like the mentality piece of it, would you attribute your success in trail running to anything related to lacrosse?
Yeah, in a couple of ways. Number one of the things you just touched on is that lacrosse is such a beautiful game, and it's a perfect mix between physicality and finesse. You do have to have a certain amount of aerobic fitness, but you also have to have a lot of athleticism. It's a game of momentum. It can be very fast. My job and role on the team was really to be the hustle guy, the guy that covered ground and hustled for ground balls and,
Yeah.
made plays in transition and played both sides of the field. I was a midfielder in college. And so, in that respect, like just cultivating competitiveness, learning how to, train and compete and contribute to a team, that's all super valuable. But
Yeah.
then I think as you translate to trail running, as it compares to running on the track or going into the road marathon circuit or something like that, that
Mhm.
athleticism, I think, is something that really benefited me because I had had years of, cutting back and forth and practicing footwork and things like that, so that when you're running down a technical trail or on a ridge line, it doesn't feel quite as foreign as if you grew up just running in a straight line your whole life. And so in that way, I think, the physical component of it carried over, but then also the years of just being a competitor
Yeah.
and, cultivating the discipline that it takes to work towards a goal and be single-minded towards something, both those things really translated to my running career.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting thing for someone, from my perspective to imagine, what our starting line experiences, how they would be so different from one another. Like you're standing at a starting line contemplating victory. Like, you're doing the calculus on how do I win this thing, right? Like what is your starting line? How would you characterize your starting line? Like what's going through your head from that moment? Do you have a playbook? Like I think about, you doing hard rock or your first Leadville, like are you coming in it with a strategy and I'm going to pick it up at mile 73 and I'm going to start, you know what I mean?
You know, I think this is actually a weakness I've always had in that I've never been somebody who intentionally sits down and sketches out a race plan. And I really only raced in one style for the course of my entire career, which was basically like stay in contact, don't get too far back, but I was never a front runner, right? I was never the type of guy that tried to assert my authority into the race in the early miles. And now with guys like Jim Walmsley and Zach Miller famously taking the opposite approach and putting pressure on the field straight out of the gates, I've always just really admired that because that's terrifying to me, where they feel a motivation of like people are chasing me or whatever. I would find that overwhelmingly depressing or scary or
Yeah.
anxiety inducing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so my strategy was always like, okay, just try and run your race, be sustainable, but maintain contact. So in the case that you have an opportunity, you can hit the gas and you can try and take advantage of an opportunity.
Yeah.
So that led to me having, I think, a really consistent long career, just employing that strategy. But that was always like my mindset at a start line was not necessarily, okay, let's visualize the moment that I've been thinking about for the last 6 months where I'm going to make my move.
Right.
It was mostly just like, let's copy paste the playbook that I've run at every single
Every
race.
time.
And occasionally it went super well.
Yeah.
Occasionally it was just average. Very rarely was it a disaster until more recently in my career. And that consistency is something that I'm proud of. But yeah, sometimes I do think that I could have been a little bit more bold.
Yeah. Okay. So if we go into your first 100-mile attempt at Leadville, Prior to Leadville, what was your longest race?
50 miles.
Okay, so you're doubling it, and are you approaching it like a competitor, or are you just like, hey, I'm going to see what this is like?
Not explicitly. Like, I knew I wanted to finish, and actually the funny thing is I knew at the start line that there was nothing that was going to stop me, that I was
Really?
going to finish. Yeah, absolutely. I knew it. I knew it.
Mm.
And I had been thinking about that day for a year and a half probably at that point before I finally arrived at the start line. And because what I described earlier, where I sort of had a kind of loss of identity after my lacrosse career came to a close, this had sort of become my identity. It became my single-minded purpose in life for a little while, was to
Yeah.
do Leadville. It just totally
Mm.
captured my imagination and
Yeah.
became the architecture and the organizing force through which the rest of my life proceeded, in the same way that I used lacrosse to be sort of the center of my life
Yeah.
when I was a team sport athlete. And so when I got to the start line, it was that feeling of like, I'm finally here. Let's do it. I can't wait. And there's nothing that's going to stop me. And I think that's why I was able to finish third place in my first attempt, which totally surprised me. I didn't expect to be on the podium. My family was even more surprised. I had a huge crew caravanning around the course. Of course, I'm
Yeah.
a Colorado boy, so I had a lot of
Yeah.
support. And everybody that was there was completely shocked. And yeah, it remains one of those peak moments in life that you think about all the time, that you'll never recreate, but is a really, really special memory.
Yeah. Who got first and second ahead of you? Do you remember?
Duncan Callahan, legend from Gunnison, Colorado, who's a two-time champion of Leadville, and
Told
Zeke
us this already.
Tiernan. Zeke Tiernan, who is also, like an amazing athlete himself. He was an All-American at the University of Colorado, and he turned out to be really important,
Amazing.
especially in those early days of my career. He ended up becoming sort of like a mentor of mine after that race.
Okay. You're standing at the finish line, or the starting line rather, and you think there's nothing that's going to stop me. Was that a strategy? You know what I mean? Like, was that how you were like, okay, this is the right mentality to have, or that was just like in this like calm moment of like, I'm going to finish.
What it was a supreme lack of fear, I think. And
Wow.
I think it was just born out of what I just described, in that, like, I had been waiting for that opportunity for a while. And
Yeah.
I think I had an intuition, because I had always been good at running, even though I never ran in an organized sense. I never ran track, I never ran cross country, but as a field sport athlete, that was my strength. Nobody could keep up with me. I always made the defense tired, etc.
Yeah.
So I always knew it was a strength of mine. And so maybe it was a deep intuition of like, actually, this is the sport that you were born to pursue.
Yeah.
Who knows? But no, it wasn't something that I, purposefully cultivated. I wasn't doing mental training exercises to have that confidence, but it was just I'm so happy to be here. I've been thinking about this for such a long time. Here's your opportunity. Let's go take advantage of it.
Yeah. Man, that's great. So fast forward to the other end of the bookshelf, the other book end of your most recent 100-mile attempt. Was that Hard Rock?
Yes.
Yeah. So what's going through your head at that starting line?
Dude, okay, this is fun. And, I haven't ever put these pieces together, the first 100-miler and the last 100-miler, and the differences between the two,
Is
because
it the last 100-miler or the most recent 100-miler?
most recent, yeah,
Okay.
the last one that I've completed. But the last two races that I've completed have both been disastrous. One was at the Grand Raid at Reunion Island, and the last one was Hard Rock 2023.
Got it.
And I think now I have maybe 13 100-mile finishes in 14 starts, I think. So I've been pretty consistent.
Slightly better than my finish rate.
Slightly better, but we'll turn it around.
Yeah.
Anyway, one of the things I talked about in some of my pre-race interviews at Hard Rock this year was that I was filled with fear. So going back to what I just said about Leadville, is I had zero fear in 2010 when I had no experience. Now I've got tons of experience, but I was consumed by fear. And I think the reason for it was because I knew I just wasn't in the same physical condition that I was in 2021 when I finished second place behind Francois and ran a really fast time.
Yeah.
And so again, deep intuition probably signaling, hey, this is not going to be an easy day, bro.
Yeah.
Like you didn't do what was necessary to cover the course
Yeah.
in, the same style. And then foolishly employing a strategy that was hopefully going to make me competitive to win the race without the
Mhm.
fitness necessary to win the race. It ended up being a complete disaster, but critically, I did finish.
Yes. Okay. Now the Venn diagram of Dylan Bowman and Josh Rosenthal. Finally, we've crossed over. It was just two circles. Now we have some crossover. I actually spend the money on the race for that feeling of fear. I love that feeling of fear, and I love doing something that I have a low likelihood of finishing. I wish I could finish 100 miles. I wish my body like gave up and ran out at mile 100, but it gives out much sooner. But so now, think about that hard rock, and now I'm asking for advice. When and the documentaries out there, so people can go deep on your story in that. You're dark. It's late race. There's carnage, and you decide to put another foot in front of another. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
You get up and you go. How did you do that? And how did you know you weren't injured? You know what I mean? Like, there's a point of also in that it's like, hey, am I injured and I shouldn't keep going, or am I okay and not, this is mental, or I'm just going to be a little extra sore. So that's the whole soup that I'm talking about here that I'm trying to work through.
Yeah. So things unraveled for me around mile 60 at Hard Rock at the Uray aid station going in the counterclockwise direction.
Mm-hmm.
Got really bad going over Virginia's Pass. Ended up recovering a little bit in Telluride. So this is roughly mile 72. And so I left Telluride. And at that point, I knew my crew was not going to be coming to Chapman, the final crew checkpoint. So as I left Telluride, I sort of felt like, okay, you got to make it home now. You got to make it all the way around, even though things weren't going well. And then going up and over the top of Oscar's Pass and down into Chapman, things really spiraled and got out of control. People started passing me right and left. I was like having to stop to gasp for air, bent over my poles, and my legs were fried, excuse me, etc. And so I ended up vocalizing my skepticism that I was going to be able to make it to my pacer, great guy, great athlete named Rich Lockwood. He was there, very supportive, trying to encourage me along. Ended up stumbling into the Chapman aid station and told the aid station captain there that I was quitting. I'm done. It's over.
Yeah.
And there was a film crew there to document it. Also told the film crew, hey, I'm out. I'm done. I just got to rest for a little while. The aid station captain there is a guy named Bill Schum, and he and I are now super close, and we're now actually combining forces on a new thing that we just announced to the Freetrail community that's going to try and mobilize the community around volunteer work based on our experience together.
Nice.
And basically, he babysat me at the Chapman aid station for 2.5 hours. I was asleep for most of that time.
Okay.
They fed me coffee, they fed me donuts, and eventually it just became apparent that like you can still make it, or at least you can try again to make it.
Mm-hmm.
And psychologically, I got to a point where it was like, okay, I at least have to try to make it. And if I get 2 miles out of this aid station, I can always come back and catch a ride back to Silverton. But I at least need to give it one more shot. And I don't know where that resolve came from. Honestly, Josh, I think you can probably relate to this, but I had had this vision in my head for months because we have a now 16-month-old son. He was just under a year old at the time of Hard Rock 2023. And I had this vision in my head of like, obviously having the perfect day and carrying my son and kissing the rock as the symbolic finishing of my Hard Rock loop.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't get it out of my head. I was like, man, I don't want my son to like his first race experience, even though he'll never remember this, to be his dad quitting at mile 82, Like I still want to carry him to the rock and kiss it. And that was really a thing that I
Mhm.
think kept me going. And eventually I was able to cover those final 18 miles. Big thanks to Rich Lockwood, my pacer, for helping me out through that stretch. And even though it's objectively my worst performance ever, it's one of the most proud performances ever for sure.
Yeah. Do you, as we kind of get close to landing the plane here, do you attribute that moment of, okay, you're coming in, you think it's over, everyone thinks it's over. There were certain components that went into that. Sounds like there was some rest involved, there was some food involved, and there was some external motivation involved. I mean, are you an externally motivated person? Like someone saying something to you can you can alter your will in response to what that person is saying?
I think I'm a very self-critical person.
Mm.
And knowing the shame that I would personally feel to have bailed at that point. I mean, I'm 82 miles in. It's not like I would be dropping at mile 40 after I turned my ankle. It was like
Yeah.
I was just blown out. I raced like an idiot, went way too hard, blew up, exploded,
Yeah.
and then struggled to get to 82. I wasn't injured. Didn't think I was injured, to your earlier question.
Yeah.
So it was more of like, you will be so personally embarrassed and you will regret this if you pull the plug here. You got to at least try.
Yeah.
And there was some like mysterious stuff like going over Oster's Pass that I just described where I was like gasping for air. I really felt like there was something wrong. So that's where it was like, okay, I at least left the option open where if I get halfway up Grand Swamp Pass and I can't breathe, I'll just walk back and drop.
Mm.
So I did have that in the back of my head. Luckily, I got over the top of that pass. And at that point, it was like, okay, you got no choice now. You got to make it home.
Yeah. Anything that you'd recommend from a strength training standpoint that maybe helps you be ready for that mile 82, or let's say my version of 82, maybe it's mile 70. Is there anything I can do from a strength training standpoint that you would recommend that could maybe push that 70 back to 82? You know what I mean?
Probably, yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert on the subject,
Yeah.
but
Oh, I'm not an expert on anything.
those like skater squats and deadlifts and the bent knee calf raises. Those are
Yeah.
sort of the core of my lower body
Yeah.
strength regimen. But I do think that especially for those of us in our late 30s, early 40s, and the case of myself and yourself,
Yeah.
it is important to prioritize that stuff because I do think that we do lose that strength that we naturally have as we age.
Yeah.
And it is critical to remain, to maintain structural integrity of our body and keep moving forward as the miles start accumulating. So hope that helps.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, Dylan Bowman, thanks for your time. Obviously, I'm a huge Freetrail fan. I know a lot of people are that are listening, but hopefully there's a lot that aren't, and we'll discover it for the first time. I'll make sure and set you up real nice at the beginning of this podcast with all of the Freetrail, promo that I can possibly give you. But thank you for doing this.
Thank you, man. Yeah, and likewise, I super appreciate everything you guys are doing at Borderlands and
Thanks, man.
just love the look and feel and style of everything you guys are working on. And
Thanks,
I know the app is coming or is
Yeah, I was
even
just
live
testing it.
now.
Yeah, I was just testing it right before. It's a funny feeling to, as an entrepreneur, I always talk about you've got to be a little bit embarrassed or you've waited too long, and it's like, God, I feel like I'm too embarrassed by this. But it's also like it's time. I just got to throw it out there. I'm gonna get it handed to me, but hopefully there's enough good people out there that give me constructive feedback and it goes somewhere. But if not, I'll die trying.
Well, that we started with an app too, and that was a complete disaster. And but it was like the first step towards kind of figuring out what we were supposed to be doing. And
Yeah.
you're working with a much cooler concept than we were.
Yeah,
So
well, we'll see. I think in the end, just what I love is that I've found this particular group of trail runners that just that I resonate with so much, that think about it similarly to me, and I love it. It's a dream come true to be in the industry.
Amazing.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, maybe we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Appreciate
Thanks,
you
Josh.
taking the time, and we'll be in touch. All right, see you. Maybe. There we go.